So after last night's loss to the Toronto Maple Leafs 6-3, the Sabres fall to 12 straight losses in a row. I think it's the third longest streak in the Sabres history, and we're getting pretty close to the all-time record, which is 18 games they set back in, tied with the Pittsburgh Penguins a while back. Back in 2020 is when they set that record, and it looks like there's no end in sight of what's coming next. We look at the schedule coming up, we see all 12 losses, and it just keeps getting worse and worse as the games go on. The next few games are nothing different from that. Boston, Islanders, Chicago, St. Louis, Dallas, Colorado, Vegas, Washington, Ottawa, Seattle, Carolina. The list goes on and on. And at some point in time, you look at this and go, what team can the Sabres beat? What team is possible? And at this point, it doesn't even look like anybody. You have a team, Montreal, that was the worst team at that point, was worse than the Sabres. They were the last team in the division. Sabres were second worst, and they lose 6-1. You look at Utah, that struggles scoring, definitely struggles goals against. They blew them out 5-2. The Colorado game, the infamous one, back in December 3rd, they're up 4-0 and lose 5-4. You have to go all the way back to November 23rd is when they last won. They were 11-9-1 at that point, and they were a top 3 team in the Atlantic, which was a playoff spot at that point. Now, not to say they're going to hold on to win that, they're going to hold on to be a playoff team, because we've seen that for years past that they've done that and they've fallen apart. So nothing to hold on to. But you just kind of look back and wonder what happened to this team, especially at the start of November. Really, you had 2 losses, back to back in the first and the second. But after that, they were pretty dominant. 5-1 against Ottawa, 6-1 against the Rangers, winning a shootout against Calgary, won 3 in a row, lose 7-5 in Montreal, bad one. Won once again to St. Louis, drop 1 to Philadelphia, and you go on this 3-game winning streak. But this stretch right here was phenomenal. Like before that stretch, they were 4-7-1, leading up, going to the last St. Louis win. Last win against San Jose. They were 11-9-1. And great stretch. It seemed like they were starting to really turn it around, starting to really put it together. And you have 12 straight losses at this point now. I start throwing some numbers at you. They are last in the division, and they're last in the conference. And they are the second worst team in hockey. The only team that's worse than them right now is the Nashville Predators. We look at the 12 games together, or combined, the Sabres have been outscored 51-27. It's just, you look at the stats, breaking down offensively and defensively. Starting off with the offense, goals scored 21st in the NHL, shots on goal 24th in the NHL, power play percentage 30th in the NHL, shooting percentage 19th, face-off percentage 21st. You go to defense, goals against 26th, shots on goal attempts 22nd, penalty kill 22nd, penalty minutes 29th. It just keeps getting worse and worse as it goes on, and we're going to quickly go on here. And NHL Network, thankfully, put out a nice stat to show you the 12-game losing streak. They are 0-9-3. They average 2.25 goals a game. Against them is 4.17. Power play percentage is 6.1. Penalty kill is 69.4. Goal difference is minus 23. And what I talked about in the beginning, tied for third longest winless streak in NHL history, in franchise history. Again, I believe that this will get to 18. And I won't be surprised if it goes much further than that. I mean, the Sabres will probably own the longest losing streak in NHL history pretty soon. This team is free falling. There's no momentum. There's no nothing in place that you can point to and say this is going to get better. Unfortunately, again, it's not. It's been happening for far too long. Far too long. It is going to extend to 14 straight years without the playoffs. In a league that half the team makes it, or half the league makes, I should say. Back even in 2020, the COVID year, I think there was an exception of 5 or 6 teams that didn't make the playoffs because they let everyone in because of COVID. They still couldn't make it in. Still couldn't. You had a couple, years like that. I think they were the last team out of that for the COVID year. And then back in 2022, they were 1 point short of the playoffs. And you had momentum there. It was a high scoring team. They were exciting. They were respectable. There's a lot of momentum going to that back into 2023. What they do? They did absolutely nothing to build the team. Didn't add any pieces. Didn't go out and get any better players. And they free falled. Now they were only a couple losses back from what they were in 2022, but you look at this now, it's 12 straight losses now. It's you look at, if you again going back to this, if you look at the pace they had here, they would still be a playoff team. They would be a great team right now in the NHL. I shouldn't say great team, but they would be a respectable team right now. They'd be in the playoffs. The very worst case, they'd be a wild card team. 12 straight losses. I just don't see how they snap out of this. And it goes on every level. The players at this point, I think, they're crushed. I don't think they have any momentum, any care in the world to really go out there and play hard. They probably just look at it as, for any of us, when we go to our jobs and everything else around us is no one's doing their job, nothing's structured, everyone's doing everything the wrong way. So you kind of look at it, it's like, why should I care? Why should I try when no one else cares? It's not going to change anything. It's probably the players at this point. Why should I try when nothing's going to change? When it's going to mean nothing at the end? So you have that on the player level. You have on the coach level that he can't do. Lindy Ruff cannot do anything else. Once he got to the 10-game losing streak, that was Toronto. They lost 5-3 to Toronto. I'm at a loss for words. So what happens at that Montreal game? There's another part that goes into it. We're going to jump the GM for a second. We're going to go to the owner. Flies down there. Pegula's going to meet with the team, with the free-falling Sabres at a 10-game losing streak at this point. What does he do? He says the solution's in the room. I have all confidence in the world, everybody here, that they're going to figure it out. What do? They lose 6-1 against Montreal. They gave up a goal 19 seconds into the game. For Toronto, they gave up a goal not even a minute and a half into the game in that one. So you have 2 games back-to-back where the opposing team immediately scores, sets a tone, sets a pace, and they free fall after that. Now we'll go back to the owner real quick, but going back to the GM. GM has done absolutely nothing for Kevin Adams. He has not tried at all to try and get great players. And to his point, he is correct that the Sabres are on probably a lot of no-trade lists. I don't blame him for those players. But it's his job to try and convince those teams, or if you have to overpay a little bit to get those guys, you have to do something. It sucks that you're in that position and you're in a spot where no one wants to be here. No one wants, it's going to be tough to get players here, whether it's signing or trading, but you did this to yourself. You've been here for 5 years. You've set the tone and you set the structure of what the team is and what the organization is. You have not gone out there and get the necessary pieces in place to do so. So it falls on him, and he's talking about blaming palm trees and taxes and so forth. I don't want to hear about that. That's not an excuse for anybody. Now, I will say I do believe that he is trying. There's a lot of reports that he's trying to make any trade possible, any moves possible. But I think there's 2 things that could be true here. He could be trying his best to make those moves happen, but at the same time, he can just suck as a GM. He can just be bad at his job. And I think that's what's coming down to. You have a guy in place that is not qualified to be a GM. So you have that on the GM level. And then going back to the owner, you have an owner that does not care at all. Especially with that speech right there against Montreal. This was the day before the game, so that was December 16th. The fact that he would fly all the way to Montreal, not that that's far for him, but they would fly all the way to Montreal and give that speech it's laughable. And I had no expectation before the news came out of what he said. I did not have any expectation. I didn't think he was going to do anything. I didn't think it was going to mean anything. Even with that being said, I was still upset hearing that from Pegula, because it shows me 2 things. Either he is just out of touch with anything that's going on with the team, or he does not care. Both of them are scary to think about and sad, to be honest with you. If either way, if he doesn't care or he's just so out of touch. This franchise, not just for this year, but for over a decade since Pegula has bought it, has been free falling. There's been countless great players that have been here that they've ruined and gone somewhere else and have success. I mean, the list goes on and on about O'Reilly, Eichel, Reinhart, whoever. Those are just the top guys. But you just break it down even further than that. You look at basically the Buffalo Panthers, the Florida Panthers have a ton of former teams on there, Kyle Poso and so forth, and it builds up, and you just see all these other players that leave Buffalo and go elsewhere and have great success. Middlestat with Colorado. And it's probably going to keep continuing, whoever they go to. At this point, I was surprised. There has been talks about Dylan Cousins being on the trade market. At least teams calling. He'll probably go somewhere else and he'll play amazing because that's just what it is. The other players go to teams that know what they're doing. They have a standard. They're structured and have a winning culture. That is what the biggest difference is from everyone else to the Sabres. The Sabres don't have it. They don't have structure. They don't have a standard. They don't have a winning culture. They don't have anything in place or people in place that know what they're doing. And for this one, I don't. There's not one thing you can point to say it fixed us. Like just getting rid of GM, just getting rid of this one player. Unfortunately, it's just not what it is. So for me, it is kind of a radical, over the top idea. But you have to essentially get close to an expansion draft as possible. You basically have to get to the point where you are a new franchise coming into the league and starting over again. So for me, again, very drastic, very radical. This one never happened, obviously. But first thing for Pagula, what he has to do is if he doesn't care about the franchise, doesn't know what he's doing, spend the money to get hockey of operations, president of hockey operations. Go out and spend the money on a guy who has success and knows what he's doing, and let him run the franchise. That should be the first thing. We did have that with Pat LaFontaine in 2013, and I believe he quit after a couple months. Whether that comes down to the G or from the owner and him the owner or whatever it may be, you have to get someone in here that knows what he's doing. Start with that. Next thing, fire the GM. Once again, Kevin Adams is not qualified at what he's doing to run this team. He has not gotten the people in place, the signings, the trades, whatever it may be. He has not done anything, especially the last two off seasons, to build this team back, to make this team better. Just a couple one-year veterans. That's it. Third one is basically just, I think you really need to sit down and pick your core players. Whether it's Paterka, Dahlin, Thompson, UPL, Byron, whoever that may be on your list, Owen Power, whoever you think is your core players moving forward, everyone else should go. I know it's not realistic, it's probably not the smartest idea, but I think part of it too is I think these players are just damaged goods at this point for the Sabres. I think they're so used to this culture, so used to losing, it doesn't bother them anymore, it doesn't affect them. Nothing that the coach does, or he sits them or whatever they may be, does anything. And I think it's time for everyone just to get a fresh start and go somewhere else. And you bring in a whole new core, you bring a whole new group in here and rebuild from there. Again, you keep your core pieces, some of the core pieces, Paterka, Dahlin, Thompson, that's kind of my people I would bring back. Or if you want to use Thompson as just trade bait to get someone else to bring in here, that could be very plausible. Something needs to change. And I think definitely a huge shakeup on the roster needs to happen. Not just one or two players, but a multitude of players. And finally, it's going all in. Just spending the money, whoever's out there. And I'm not going to sit here and say I know who's on free agency, who's going to be up, putting it out there right now. But the Sabres have to spend money regardless. For countless years, they have had tons and tons of cap room. I think there's been more times of them trying to just hit the floor or reach the floor than as opposed to a team where you look at, oh wow, the Sabres are cap stricken. They're spending tons of money. They're not. You've never heard anyone say that about the Sabres for it feels like a decade. It feels like, to be honest with you, it feels like it's such a long time since it's been like that. They have given out big contracts to their players, but some of it doesn't work out. You look at Dylan Cousins, you look at Tage Thompson, they get a big one to Jack Eichel years back, Kyle Poso, Jeff Skinner, but it's, for the most part, those, for some of them, they haven't worked out. But I think regardless, too, that the Sabres have to know what they want. They have to get playmakers. They have to have identity first. Let's start with that. They need an identity. They need to start with that. Get the basic fundamentals right and build from there. But also too, I think you have to go out there and just spend the money. You have to. You can't just build from prospects and just be a Stanley Cup team and be contending for years on. Is that part of the process? Is being able to develop players and have them come in and play well? Absolutely, that's part of it. The other thing too is you have to bring in people. Look at the Florida Panthers, what they brought in. Made a trade for Kachuk. They brought in Sam Reinhart and a few more pieces from there, and they went to back-to-back Stanley Cups, won it last year. Doesn't mean you're guaranteed to have that same success, but it's better. It's a hell of a lot better than what you're doing right now. And it's very frustrating to to see this franchise be this bad, because I do believe Buffalo is a great city for hockey. It's a great hockey culture. The fans don't want to hate the team. They want to embrace it. They want to love it. They want to support. They want to get excited, like how it was in the 90s, early to mid 2000s. They want that. They truly do. They don't want to hate the team, the players, the organization. They don't want to do that. But for so many years, they made the fans turn against them. And you saw like last year too. There was a point where the players were at it with the fans because of the booing. Didn't want to salute them at the end of the games and so forth. Go to the center of the ice. It's gotten worse. It has truly. It's gotten worse, and it's not gonna get any better. Again, you look at the upcoming schedule. I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel with these teams. You would like to think, like a Chicago, who's down there with the Sabres, is one of the worst teams. You'd like to think they can win that, but again, Montreal, they've shown they've lost twice and got blown out twice in the last two matchups of them. Could they just be a typical Sabres and just surprise people for no reason and beat Boston? For me, I highly doubt it. Again, you go down the list, Seattle, Ottawa. I mean, these are teams that are doing much better at this point. You go down the list, and to be honest with you, you kind of look at it, it's like, are they going to win a game again at some point? Are they truly going to win another game? Is it possible? I'm sure they'll win one eventually, but at this point, you look at the schedule and the teams, and you don't see that. You don't point to me where the win is in this. I don't know. Maybe they get a fluke win at some point. That's how it feels. Unfortunate at this, at the state right now. They hold this. I think the second overall pick at this point now, barring before the lottery, of course. But they have the second best odds right now to land the first overall pick. You do have, some people have told me there's a deep draft class. I don't want to make it sound like I know who the prospects are, because they're all over the place in the world. Hopefully the Sabres get the first overall pick, and they get a offensive playmaker, and they get someone special. And I think that's part of it too. Is you just gotta get that elite player, you gotta get that special player, and just build from there. So again, it's very frustrating to see what happens. Today they play Boston. I don't have any expectations whatsoever. I think Boston will blow them out, and we're gonna have the same discussion again. And of course, everyone's social media, the streak will extend to 13, and we'll keep going from there. So again, I just don't know what else to really say with this team. It's very frustrating. Also, too, I got one last piece of stats here for the records going back to 2020. This is also kind of taking a knock at Kevin Adams. Since 2020, the Sabres have been 139, 161, or 35, or if you want to combine the regulation losses and the OT and shootout losses together, the Sabres are 139 and 196. They have one winning season out of that, 42, 33, and 7 in 2022. That's what we talk about with their one game out of the playoffs. 2023 to take a step back, 39 and 37 and 6. So had a winning season technically with that, but it's embarrassing. It's tough. It's tough to see. Let's keep going on. And unfortunately, it's not just the streak itself of losing, but the playoff drought is. I don't think you're too far to say it could be 20 years. I mean, that's looking 6 years into the future almost, but that's what it feels like at this point. So, I mean, we'll see what happens on Saturday if they break the streak, and hopefully they can bounce back from the season from there, or it'll extend to 13 games.